All right, have 1:30, which is our starting time, and I'll call the meeting to order. To start off with, we'll have the prayer. Representative Senator Gavan, if you would open us with prayer. I'm sorry.
Y'all bow with me. Lord, we thank you for this glorious day that you've given us. We pray for some rain in this part of the country, and that you would nurture our crops and trees. And we just thank you for the opportunities you've given us. We pray for discernment and discretion and wisdom as we go about our job. In your name we pray. Amen.
Now, if you would please rise, and Representative Simpson will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Ms. Ogden, if you would call the roll, please.
Senator Cornley, Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Elliott, Senator Gavan, Senator Stewart, Representative Lamb, Representative Pringle, Representative Rafferty, Representative Simpson, Representative Underwood, Representative Wilcox,
Here.
and Senator Kelly.
Here.
8, and we have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll begin the work session. As you can tell on your agenda there, on your order, we're going to go in order with the Board of Examiners and Counseling being up first. And so at this time, Ms. Thomas, with the Examiner's Office, if you will go over the findings with us, please.
Yes, sir. I wanted to start and let you guys just point something out for just for your information, and then for some of those that are newer to the committee, all 7 reports that we're going to go over today are rollovers. So when we have a rollover, we strictly go back and look at what the issues were before and check on those issues. So they're not full sunset reports. They just are checking up on the issues that were there from the prior report. Okay? So the first board we have is the Board of Examiners and Counseling. They license and regulate the professional practice of counseling. They were created in 1979. The board has 7 members that are appointed by the governor that serve 5-year terms. The board is compensated $300 a day plus travel. This board has an emergency contract with Smith Warren Management Services for $31,500 per month. And that emergency contract began in April of 2025, and it is in place until a new contract has been awarded. This board has 2 employees. Their legal services are provided by the Attorney General's office. This board's funds are in the state treasury, and the board retains their funds at year end. This board issues 4 types of licenses, and as of February 18th of 2025, they had 5,233 licensees. The licensure qualifications for this board can be found on page 4 and 5 of their report. You do have to take an examination to be licensed as a counselor in this state, and the examination results can be found on page 6. The licensed professional counselor and the supervisor licensees, those expire every 2 years and can be renewed online. The associate licensed counselors expire annually, and those cannot be renewed online yet. The significant issues for this board start on page 9. This board did resolve 5 of the 6 prior findings and significant issues. The one that is remaining is dealing with emergency contracts. It comes from 2023, and that is when the board entered into multiple emergency contracts after the sudden resignation of their prior executive director. So currently, like I said, the board is still operating under an emergency contract now.
All right. We'll go. Are there any questions from committee members? Representative, go ahead.
The way I'm reading this, they entered into an emergency contract. When was the original one? 2020?
Yes, sir.
So they've been doing, I see this all the time on contract review. Every contract Keith Warren has is an emergency contract. And how do you have an emergency contract for 5 years running?
Well, so they did have a contract that came before contract review for 1 year from October 1 of 2023 through September 30th of 2024. But the board failed to send the renewal contract to the committee before it expired in 2024. So then they had to restart the RFP process, and they did that. But then there was a protest on their contract after they redid the RFP process and awarded it, and so they had to get another emergency because of that. And they're still operating under that emergency as of last Friday.
So the professional management company didn't get it done right and didn't get it done in time, which if you read these reports, you'll see it over and over and over again. Smith, Warren and Associates failed to properly deposit money. Smith, Warren and Associates failed to do the contracts correctly. I mean, this is a pattern that just jumps out. You sit on contract review like I do. You see it every month, don't you? Yes, sir. Every month. It's the same thing. It's an emergency contract from Smith, Warren. And this, yeah, I feel sorry for these people. I mean, they're paying $30,000, and it goes up. It started at $12,500, and it's now over $35,000 a month. And the quality of their management has not gone up at all. I'm not mad. I'm just, this kind of stuff just frustrates the stew out of me that we're paying all this money to these people, and they can't seem to put themselves out as professionals, yet they can't get their paperwork done on time. I mean, it's a beautiful little invention they came up with thousands of years ago called a calendar. You put it on and say, I need to have my contract turned in by this time.
Senator Gavan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So back on my board kick and what is the executive branch? This particular group, the governor, appoints, but a list of candidates entirely presented by the executive committee of the Counseling Association. And two of these are supposed to be, John Q. and Jane Q. Public. I mean, I don't know that the governor should have to have those limited by what this association, promotes to them. Seems like we ought to have some generic folks there. I'm gonna want to look at how this board's make up when we convene to discuss how we're going to amend these bills. And then just to follow up on Representative Pringle, I don't know whether there's a legitimate reason that we need to maybe consider some things to allow for the governor to give an extension of time if you need just a little more time to get something done rather than starting all over with the RFPs. If we, maybe it's not worth fine tuning. Maybe it is just the repeat offenders, and I'm just getting tired of it. And if people can't get their contracts done on time, I'm ready to start sunsetting some people.
Representative Simpson.
Part of this, and I'm wholeheartedly agree with you with what you're saying through this. If I understand this correctly, these are the groups that we saw last year. And one of the issue last year that they gave us was they had emergency contracts. So that was their significant issue, was emergency contract. As we sit here today, not only have they not addressed, the significant issues from 2021, 2022, 2023, we've had that meeting in the last year. And as they stand here as of Friday, they're still under an emergency contract. At what point of them just thumbing their nose at us and just refusing to do anything other than emergency contracts does this board say, does this committee say, hey, if y'all are going to continue to not follow the laws, then you've shown deliberate ability to not follow the law. This isn't something that just slipped through. This is an actual, I'm not going to do what the board tells us to do. So, at some point we've got to evaluate the status of that.
Thank you. Anyone else? It seems like this is a recording of the same conversations we have over and over and over again.
With this specific group, it sure does.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anyone else? All right. Moving on. Ms. Thomas, let's go to Private Investigation Board.
The Private Investigation Board was created in 2013, and they exercise license and regulatory authority over private investigators, certified trainers, assistant trainers, apprentices, and business entities that conduct private investigations. Their board is comprised of 8 members that are appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, the Attorney General, and the Private Investigators Association, as well as a member appointed by the State Bar Association. The members serve 4-year terms. They do not receive any compensation, only travel. They had one staff member that attended the board member training. This group has a contract with the Austin Group for Executive Director and Administrative Services. That contract is an annual contract that began, the most current one, on September 1st of 2025 and is for $92,610 a year that is paid monthly. This board does not own real properties, nor does it have any employees. The Attorney General's office provides their legal counsel. Their funds are held in the state's treasury and are retained at year end. They issue 5 different types of licenses, and they have 682 licensees. The qualifications for licensure are on pages 4 and 5. There is an exam that is administered to be licensed, and the statistics that we have are on page 6. Licenses are valid for 2 years, and about 80% of those are completed online. This board was able to provide us with some demographics of their licensees that can be found on page 7. This rollover did have some prior issues related to complaints, so there's some complaint data that can be found on pages 12 and 13 of the report. During the 2-year rollover period, they received 26 complaints, and they resolved all 26 of those. The significant issues for this board begin on page 8. The first one is new this year, and it was that the board submitted invoices to the Comptroller's office for payment based on an amended contract amount prior to the amendment being fully executed. The second one is that the board charged and collected apprentice fees, in-state agency initial license and renewal fees, and out-of-state agency initial license and renewal fees for which a specific amount was not set by law, but there was also no administrative rule to set the specific amount. The third issue is that the board did not update their administrative rules to reflect changes pertaining to the board members' term limits. The fourth is that the board has not complied with certain provisions of executive orders issued by the governor. If you flip to page 10, you'll see the status of prior findings. So 8 of the 10 prior findings and significant issues have been resolved. What is remaining is that the board did not notify the Secretary of State of vacancies occurring on the board. This is from 2019. We had, that was not resolved. We still had issues with not notifying the Secretary of State at all or not doing it timely. The last significant issue that came forward is from 2023, and it was related to questionnaires and how complainants responded. When we issued the questionnaires this year, complainants still had issues with the board not communicating results of their complaint or not believing the board did everything that they could do to resolve their complaints. But I will say that when we tested their complaint files, we saw that the complaint handling process and complaint files revealed that the board had corrected a lot of the issues from the prior reports, but we had to include it based on the survey responses.
Okay. All right. Questions from members? Comments? Senator Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dixie, real quick, when we say the board submitted or the board failed to do, et cetera, we're pretty much saying that the hired executive director failed to. Is that a fair statement, acting on behalf of the board?
They do the services for the board, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other comments? Representative Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at first of all, out of fairness, 8 out of 10 being corrected is good, and I like the comments you said that they've got protocols in place that will carry forward, and so that's good. My question on page 9, where we talk about the insufficient documentation was not available to support the board's approval of the proposed rule change. So therefore, the rule change didn't come into play, and they collected fees that they should not have collected, issued licenses that they should not have issued because of that. What are they missing in the documentation?
So the board, this statute says that you can charge fees, and then some of the fees are specifically said you can't charge more than a certain amount. So they have to create a rule to go in and say, we're going to charge $50 for this fee. So they started the rulemaking process in November of 2023, but they did not complete the APA process correctly. So therefore, the rule never took effect. And so, but in the meantime, that rule was posted to their website saying this is the fees that are in place, but the rule, like I said, was not affected yet. And so then they started the process over in January of 25 to get that rule back in place to set these fees. And the rule finally became effective August 14th of 2025.
It is effective now.
It is effective now, but in the interim, they
Right.
they had not completed the APA process fully to have the rule in effect.
So I'm glad it's effective now. I guess I am concerned that they were aware of the fact that it wasn't completed and issued the license and collected the fees. Is that correct? They were aware that the rule was not amended to be able to issue those fees and licenses.
Right, so they were still collecting the fees
Yeah.
and issuing the licenses based on the rule, even though it was not fully in effect until August.
Yeah. How are they? This is just cleared out of ignorance. How are they notified? Like if they want to change a rule and it doesn't go into effect, how are boards notified? Okay, no, you didn't do this or whatever, so it's not effective. How are they notified what their status is of that kind of stuff?
But when they file a rule, I mean, the process is laid out, and there are so
Right.
many days after you file it that you leave it open for public comment. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that comes back, the board has to approve the rule again. Zach, you help me if I mess
It
this
comes
up a little
back
bit.
to a committee
And
here,
then
doesn't it?
it comes back before the board to be approved
Yeah.
again, and then it becomes effective 45-ish, well, so many days later after
Yeah.
the board approves it a second time. And so we didn't have any documentation to support that the process was
Okay.
done right, but we know that it was messed up in November of 2023, and I messed up, I mean that they didn't finish the process.
Right.
They didn't have it come back before the board and
Okay.
then go back to LSA to be finalized. And so once they did it in January, it finally got finalized and is effective in August.
Yeah, three's a charm. In the end, 8 out of 10 is better, and this one is, as of this moment, adopted and
It's in effect.
yeah. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative.
Where are their fee amounts per member? I can't find them.
They're not included in this report as it's just a rollover, and we don't normally put that in there.
Okay. I'm chasing down a little rabbit, so tomorrow, could I have that?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, Representative Simpson.
I did notice in here, and I hate to harp on this since I harped on it last year, but in the appendix of the board members, it appears that instead of focusing on where the geographical board members are located, they just did not put their address in here from their report. And I'd ask Ms. Austin, as you come in tomorrow, if you could bring us a copy of the addresses of your board members so that we have the geographic representation.
Thank you. Senator?
I'd just like to know were there any injured parties during this time where they were not in compliance?
I don't believe so. I think that the people were just paying the fees. The fees just weren't technically in place the way they should be.
Okay. Senator Goodman.
Thank you. So just going back to the board again, this group has a specific complaint that, because the majority of their board comes from names submitted by the Assisted Living Association of Alabama. And so one of the complaints from this group's board of directors is those names aren't coming in. So just like people to be thinking about the idea that we just let the governor appoint whoever she wants if they don't get the names in, say, 45 days, something like that, where they're just not waiting around, and then, the governor can get those names from, whoever she chooses.
That seems to be an issue with a number of boards, I think, as well. Any other questions from committee members?
Just in case, some people out there think I'm trying to take the governor's power away. At times I'm trying to give the governor more power.
Yeah, that'll be a quote in the headline tomorrow, I'm sure. All right, let's move on to the Board of Assisted Living Administrators.
The Board of Examiners Assisted Living Administrators was created in 2001, and they license and regulate assisted living administrators. They do not license or regulate assisted living facilities. There are 9 members of this board that are appointed by the governor. They serve 3-year terms. They receive compensation of $75 per day plus travel. We had one board member and one staff member attend board member training. This board has an administrative services contract with the Alston Group. The contract, so this contract, the current one was actually signed on Monday, on the 21st. And it is a 5% increase from the amount that you see in the report on page 2 to $88,045 a year. And it is for a year starting on, the governor signed it on September 21st. This board does not have any employees. They have a private attorney that they contract with for legal counsel. Their funds are held in the state's treasury and retained at year end. They issue 2 different types of licenses, and they have a total of 480 licensees. Licensure qualifications can be found on pages 4 and 5. There is an examination to be licensed by this board, and those examinations are administered quarterly by the board and prepared and graded by the board and its executive director, and the examination statistics can be found on page 6. All licenses are to be renewed annually, and the majority of those, 96%, are completed online. This board also had a significant issue that was related to complaint, so there's a little bit of complaint handling information that's included on page 11. They only had one complaint filed during fiscal year 24, and it was initiated by the Department of Public Health, and it was resolved by the board in fiscal year 25. The board's significant issues start on page 8. The first significant issue is that the board submitted invoices to the comptroller's office for payment based on an amended contract before the contract had been fully executed. The second issue is that the board did not comply with certain provisions of the executive orders issued by the governor. The third issue is from questionnaires, and the licensed assisted living administrators reported that they believe that strict guidelines and restrictions and over-regulations are the most significant issues facing their profession. Others think that the laws, rules, and policies are an unnecessary restriction on the practice of their profession, and they don't consider the continuing education that is mandatory necessary for the competent practice of their profession. They also pointed out that the board members that responded to our survey believe the most significant issue is getting cooperation from the association to provide nominations to the governor for the board member appointments. On page 8, we start with the status of the prior significant issues. 7 of the 10 were resolved. Those that were not, the first one is from 2019, and it is that the board did not notify the Secretary of State of vacancies occurring as a result of the expiration of members' terms. We had that issue again in this 2-year rollover. The next one is from 2023, and it was regarding the board's complaint records. This was that the complaint records did not contain adequate documentation to demonstrate that complainants were notified of the resolution of their complaint. We couldn't test this, so we can't say whether it's resolved or not because they only received the one complaint during the rollover period, like I was saying. The next issue is from 2023 also, and it was regarding the minutes of meetings and the discrepancies that were found. In the prior sunset report, we had issues about executive sessions, about the purpose not being stated, about minutes of meetings not being available, and the board not electing officers, as well as minutes not being signed. When we reviewed the minutes for this 2-year rollover period, we found that there were still issues with the purpose of the executive session being recorded in the minutes. The minutes did not indicate whether board approval of the previous minutes was in there. The board held meetings that were not posted to the Secretary of State's website. And again, the board did not elect officers. The last prior significant issue that we followed, that we still had, was from 2023. And it was that assisted living administrators that responded to our survey thought that the most significant issue was staffing and retention. And they reported that again in their responses to the survey.
Okay, members? Yes, ma'am.
Holly, you're not going to like this. The Secretary of State's office provides us, it used to be a large, thick list. Now I believe it's a thumb drive of every agency that is not current on their Secretary of State listing. The good part of this is that we assigned our intern to call every board that was out of compliance. That was two sessions ago, but called every one of them and gave them a friendly reminder, which it gave the intern meaningful work to do while they were here and a meaningful service to prevent people from winding up with this as a finding. So I would just encourage you when they do deliver that you get with an intern and assign them that same task. It worked out. You know, we had a lot of them fall off of the list because of that. So I just ask for y'all to do that in your year, please.
All right. Representative Pringle.
I'm reading here with 5 assisted living administrators selected from a list of 3 nominees for each position submitted by the Assisted Living Association of Alabama. For this is the board that the governor gets to choose from. Am I reading? The Assisted Living Association of Alabama submits a list of 3 nominees for each of the 5 positions. Am I reading that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then you flip over under significant issues on page 8. The board members feel the law needs to be changed from the Assisted Living Association providing the nominees to a new entity. Apparently, it looks like we're having a problem with those people giving their board members. So do we need to address the issue of getting a full board? I mean, can they answer the question for me? Is that okay?
There's someone there you'd like to
Yeah.
answer.
I mean, I'm just trying to get, we need to change the law. Let's change it so y'all can
Yep,
have a
or
full
we
operating
can-
board.
Speak to the mic.
Yeah.
Come up and speak to the mic, please.
And keep in mind, we'll have plenty of time for questions tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
So our bylaws say that the Assisted Living Association of Alabama will nominate our board members for the Board of Examiners of Assisted Living Administrators. So when we contact, by the way, I'm Jill Benefield, I'm the chair. So when Claire reaches out to them, and I'm CC'd, and we tell them that we need these, new candidates, the email, it's just over and over, where I'm asking for them to give us a submittal and to get this to the governor's office. And they're not complying with us.
Okay, let's just cut to the chase. Why don't y'all think of something and get with us tomorrow or later, and we'll figure out a way maybe. You can't operate without a full board.
We actually tried to introduce legislation 3 years ago about this when I took this over.
Okay.
It was killed in the House. So
Okay.
because that's a problem, and we also have consumers, and they have to do the consumers well. But
Okay.
we've been working with Mason Bass. But yeah, I think legislation needs to be done because the bottom line is 100% of administrators throughout the state are not members of that association.
Okay.
The
All
good thing is we got a new session coming
Yeah.
up, so.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah.
We'll work on that. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Any other member? Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one, the Behavior Analyst Licensing Board.
All right, this is a 2-year rollover for the Behavior Analyst Licensing Board. This board was created in 2014 and exercises licensing and regulatory authority over the practice of behavior analysts. There was one new act passed related to this board. It was their sunset law, but it added some requirements back in 2024 that had the Department of Mental Health provide certain services in office space. This board is made up of 7 members appointed by the governor. They serve 3-year terms. They do not receive compensation, only travel. 4 current board members attended board member training. This board does not have an administrator or executive director. This board has 1 employee that is shared with the Department of Mental Health. The legal counsel services are provided by an assistant attorney general that is an employee of the Department of Mental Health. The board's funds are in the state's treasury and are retained at year end. They issue 2 types of licenses, and they have 717 licensees. There is an examination that is required to obtain the licensure. The examination statistics are on page 5. They are listed out by Alabama schools. Licenses are for 2 years, and all applications for licensure renewal are processed online. On page 11, we have some complaint information because one of their major issues the last time was related to complaints. So during the 2-year rollover period, they had 13 complaints come in and they got 8 resolved. There are some open, but those are waiting on information that's been requested from the parties involved in the complaint, and that's why they're still pending. This,
Senator Gavin.
So, jumping ahead of you here, most of the complaints, the significant issues rather, I should say, remain unresolved. And I guess they don't have anybody really to work on them. So when somebody comes and talks to us tomorrow, I want to understand why they need to exist as an independent entity.
Yes, ma'am.
I had this same thought 2 years ago. I found out that without this certification in this board, they're unable to bill insurance. But I would respectfully request that we ask that the Department of Mental Health be here, because we found that they were not getting the staff and support that they needed. We did write in there in the revision of the law that they get more support from the Department of Mental Health, and it looks like that did not happen. So they were the one that I nominated to sunset 2 years ago and then got a quick education on it. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't get paid by the insurance company, and this is autism therapy, behavioral, so it's very much needed, and I think we passed the law that the insurance companies cover that, so it might have to be negotiations more complicated that you could handle more than me on why the insurance company believes that this certification has to take place. So it was a little bit more than what I thought it was when I looked into it.
Well, I appreciate that background. That is obviously changes the game just in terms of their existence, but we do need to do something to make sure it's managed properly, because I think Jim Patterson would expect that out of us.
His name, I agree, and that's the reason why I took it on and had several meetings, and their chairman of the board was answering. They had a voicemail system, and in addition to his 40 hours of work each week, he manned the voicemail, which was an untenable situation and clearly was reflected in how things were handled, that he just couldn't get to some stuff. But we did, in our code, specify that the Department of Mental Health was to give them more support and shared resources. So I would like to make sure if you could reach out and make sure that they're here tomorrow to answer the committee, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
The significant issues for this board begin on page 7. The first one is that the board does not have an adequate system of record keeping and communication in place to provide documentation and information in a timely manner. The second issue is that the board's records should only be in the possession of current staff or current board members. The third issue was that the board did not comply with executive orders issued by the governor. The status of the prior findings and significant issues are on page 8. So 2 of the 6 prior findings and significant issues were resolved. Coming forward, we had one from 2023 regarding the board's financial information. In 2023, we said that there was an unexplained discrepancy and there were instances of expenses incurred by the board being paid from another department's treasury fund. We had instances again where expenses of this board were being paid from mental health funds rather than the board's funds. So that came forward. We had issues where the board did not comply with the Open Meetings Act and statutory requirements as it relates to conducting board meetings. Those came forward. Again, we had issues with meetings, subsequent meeting minutes not showing approvals. We had one board member making a motion to enter into an executive session, and then the same board member is seconding the motion. We had the boards were convening for executive sessions, but their purpose was not clear, and it could not be determined if it was for an allowable reason. The board did not record votes to go into executive session, and we had a board meeting that was advertised on the Secretary of State's website saying that the meeting was going to be held to discuss complaints and applications, but it was going to be an executive session only and not be open to the public. However, they took minutes and discussed the sunset review. They did other things in the meeting. Another issue from 2023 was that the board did not comply with posting vacancy notices to the Secretary of State's website. That came forward. There were issues with expiring terms and then when members resigned. And the last significant issue that came forward is from 2019, and it is regarding the board members' response to the survey. And in 2019, they were said that the board is not adequately staffed, and they said that again in the survey we did this time.
Okay. It sounds like that board may be a candidate to be assimilated under another board of some sort, or some legislation to assist with that insurance requirement. Any more questions from the Senator?
I just have a concern. At first, I thought, well, maybe it's training, but I see that 4 of the 5 attended training. But this is more than one occurrence that we have with executive meetings, not keeping minutes, improper motions, not calling a meeting, or not understanding why you call an executive meeting and the criteria for that. So somehow we need to get a handle on that. I don't know, we need to have Zoom calls, have everybody on so they understand and get the same information at the same time, be able to ask questions rather than doing it online and individual, because sometimes people learn from others' questions. But it seems to be, it's more than one time that this has come up. So I don't know, does anybody know what the problem is here?
I know there's another bill that will be filed, that was filed last year regarding training of anyone serving on the board, that will be filed next week as well. So there won't be any excuse for not knowing what your duties are.
So let me ask them this question. I don't want to prolong this, but now they do have a training session. Or
Well,
whatever. How does that, what's included in that?
Our department does do training, and so we have some overall training of what the regulatory boards are and what they do, and then we go through things like Open Meetings Act, travel laws, contract review, the APA process. A session is on internal controls, and then we have a session on significant issues that keep coming up and what they are. And we tell them where they can find resources and information. And those trainings are available all the time. They're on our website. If they wanted to go back and look at them again, they're always available.
So it doesn't seem like that is the issue. I don't know if we need another law to, maybe we needed to beef it up or something, but it seems like that part is already in place. I don't know if we come and we just don't pay attention, our body is somewhere else. Our body's there, but our mind is not.
Okay, Representative.
Okay, I think part of the answer could be found on page 2. They have 1 administrative support assistant, 3. That's it. That's it, and that's shared with the Department of Mental Health. Now, Zach, could you get me the law that I passed and have it here by tomorrow where we outlined further how Department of Mental Health, because I don't want to be talking out of turn. I want to have the,
I think it's in the back of the
where is that? Because I couldn't find it. Show me what page.
page 17, 34, 5A3. At the bottom.
Could I have one or two of our attorneys review this and make sure, help me,
Shall provide
shall,
an administrative assistant who is shared or dedicated to the board.
information technology. I want to know, did they do the phone lines? Because like I said, the last time it was a sad situation with the voicemail box.
I think they still share that. When we have noted in our significant issue number 1 that they do have a shared public email and telephone messaging in place.
Okay.
So, Madam Chairman, it seems like maybe if they are sharing the same person, but I'm actually working for my first priority over here, that may be the case of where the attention, most of the attention goes, and, you know, I'll get them when I get to it for the others.
Right, tomorrow, I'm sure that when we have them in person and actually we're asking the Department of Mental Health to show up here so that they can explain from their position how they read this code and how they interpreted it and how they implemented it. Maybe we can get to more of the truth in the story, and Mike can amend it in this year's legislation. Or sunset them and figure out how to get insurance to pay for their services without this board.
Okay. Any other members? I do applaud the board member to seconding his own motion. That does make things move a little faster. All right. All right. Let's move on, Ms. Thomas, to the Massage Therapy Board.
Okay, the Board of Massage Therapy, this was a 2-year rollover. So the Alabama Board of Massage Therapy was originally created in 1996. In 2024, legislation to terminate that board passed and created the Alabama Massage Therapy Licensing Board. So this board is covering both of those, okay? There was legislation passed in the interim. In 2023, we had some legislation that passed that put a cap on certain fees charged by the board. In 2024, we had the sunset law that terminated the old board and created the new board, and it moved the board under the Board of Nursing temporarily. And then this past legislative session, we had some more legislation that passed to shore some things up with the previous year's act. This board is comprised of 9 members that are appointed by the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House. They serve 4-year terms after their initial appointments. The initial appointments were for 2, 3, and 4 years so that they could become staggered. This board does not receive compensation. They only get travel. The board members that attended training in 2024 included some members of the old board, 3 members of those, 6 members of the Board of Nursing came, and 15 employees of the Board of Nursing were there. I did check, and all of the members that were appointed to this board, the new members that were appointed at the beginning of 2025, all of those participated in the board member training. The administrator of this board is Peggy Benson. She is the administrator of the Board of Nursing. Her salary is listed there, and she's paid by the Board of Nursing. They don't own any real property. The Massage Therapy Board currently has 2 employees, and those are licensing clerks. The board uses legal counsel that is provided and paid for by the Board of Nursing. That's what's listed on page 4. They also have someone from the AG's office. The board's funds are held in the state's treasury, and they are retained at year end. They issue 4 types of licenses. As of May of 2025, they had 3,126 licensees. The qualifications for licensure are on pages 6 and 7. There are examination examination results on page 7. There are statistics for the Alabama schools in Appendix 3 of their report, if you'd like to see those. There are some licensee demographics on page 8. We did include some financial information for this board. It is on page 14. At the end of fiscal year 24, they had an unobligated cash balance of $5,469. Their significant issues start on page 9. The first significant issue was that during the sunset review period, the board's expenditures exceeded their revenues received. This was important. Their statute used to say that this could not happen, but the passage of Act 2025-395 in the last session removed that language. The next significant issue is that the board's accounting records were not sufficiently maintained by the previous administrative services provider. The third significant issue is that the board is not ensuring appointed individuals maintain statutorily required qualifications while serving on the board. The fourth significant issue is that the board adopted an administrative rule relating to massage therapy establishment licensure that was not allowed by statute. That rule, the language of Act 2025-395 changed that and cleared that up also. The fifth significant issue is that the board adopted an administrative rule relating to the registration of massage therapy schools that is not authorized by statute. The sixth issue is that the board has not complied with certain provisions of executive orders issued by the governor. On page 11, we start with the status of prior significant issues and findings. They resolved 11 of the 14 prior issues. Those that came forward, we'll start with one from 2023, and this is regarding emergency contracts with the previous administrative services provider. The board had an emergency contract that expired in September of 2023. They submitted an administrative services contract to the Contract Review Committee. The contract was held and released sometime later. In the interim, the board requested that the chief procurement officer give them another emergency contract. The CPO denied that. Ultimately, the governor signed a new contract that was in January of 2024. The administrative services provider submitted a claim to the Board of Adjustment for payments for services that were provided in the interim, and the Board of Adjustment approved that payment. So they still had some emergency contract during the period.
Now, I understand that the Board of Adjustments approved that, but did that vendor actually do the work, or it was just under the contract of that period?
The board was still providing services during the period. I mean, the administrative services provider was providing services during that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Okay.
The board did not notify the Secretary of State timely of vacancies. We still had issues with that. And these were for expiration of terms that have happened in 2023. We had that the code, where there was a conflict between two different code sections. And it was regarding the registration of massage therapy instructors. So this was unresolved because there still remained a conflict between the codes that said that there was a one-time application fee, and one said that they would have to renew and had to have a charge for renewal, and one said you just had to do it one time. So that conflict was there, but Act 2025-395 cleaned that up. The prior significant issues are on page 13. The first one is from 2023, and it is from questionnaires. We still had some of the same issues coming forward. The licensed massage therapists and the establishments that responded to the survey had a negative perception of the board and how they conducted its day-to-day operations. That's what we had in 2023. And when we redid this, we had the same issue from massage therapists and massage therapist establishments. They thought the board's rules, laws, and policy were unnecessary to their practice, that licensees are not adequately informed of changes, the board does not respond to inquiries timely, and that the board did not perform their renewal timely. And that's it.
All right. Any other questions from members? Representative Pringle.
I understand there's a little issue with these at-large members, the two at-large members appointed to the board. One's by the lieutenant governor, one's by the speaker. But one of those at-large members shall have extensive knowledge of sex trafficking and related law enforcement efforts. But there's no coordination as to, is the speaker appointed or the lieutenant governor? And the speaker appoints just the other at-large.
Yes, sir, that's what the law says.
I know, but it doesn't say who appoints it. It just says one of those two has to appoint somebody. And I think we wound up with a problem with those two at-large appointments, didn't we?
We looked at it, and it's just not clear based on the
Yeah, it's
legislation.
not. In other words, what I'm getting to is we need to clarify who's responsible for appointing that person that understands sex trafficking to serve on this board, because it's unclear. And I think we wound up with two appointments were made that weren't coordinated, and we might have a problem finding that person. So, and I find it interesting that this is another board that spends more than it brings in. Did I see that? Somewhere that they, where did I see that? 14. Yeah, I mean, the nursing board got stuck with this one. And I just hate that the nursing board is going to have to cover the cost. All right.
All right, Representative Wilcox.
Thank you.
I would actually submit, due to the horrible nature of the sex trafficking tie-in, that both of those appointments have a background in law enforcement, because from the meetings that I've had, this is one of their biggest issues that they deal with day in and day out. and that we also might look into giving them police powers, because right now they are excluded from some of the investigations that they're charged with. You know, when they go on the scene, law enforcement makes them sit out in the car. So they can't go in when evidence is being gathered. They can't be a part of what the findings are, so it is inhibiting their ability to do their job. So we've got to have some sort of a change, and if any of y'all have a better idea, please bring it forward. But we have got some schools that, I think the last time I talked with them, there was a school in Texas that had the makings of being a diploma factory. Their students are being brought in through New York from abroad, and then they're being brought to Alabama, and I don't think they're given just massages.
I have a question on that with the police powers. Are you saying to give the investigators with the massage therapy board the police powers?
I would like for you to question the people doing that tomorrow more thoroughly, but yes, there was something that they've got to have more authority to be a part of the investigations and not be excluded with the police department, because it is proper that the police department be called in when there's a prostitution ring being run out of there, but then they can't investigate, and so they're being chastised because they're not shutting them down, but they're not getting the evidence that they need to do that. And Mr. Chairman, may I ask for someone to come up and speak on that?
Yes,
Because this is important for us to think about overnight.
It's good, and we need to keep in mind that tomorrow we'll have other time too. So, yes, sir, if you
Hi,
would state your name and go ahead and.
I'm Honor Ingalls. I'm Chief of Policy with the Board of Nursing. I also function as the designated Executive Director of the Massage Board. On that, those are policy decisions that really the legislature needs to make, is how much of this do you want to turn over to law enforcement agencies, and how much do you want to run through the board? Now, we get some mixed signals on what y'all want, which is how much of this law enforcement do you want us to do? If you want us to shut down sex traffickers, we're going to need more authority than that, meaning the Massage Therapy Board, which hopefully won't be us for too long. I say, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. No, so ultimately, if you want us to shut down human traffickers, we would need to be able to participate in these investigations, meaning the Massage Therapy Board.
Participate in what manner?
Well, routinely, these local PDs are busting massage therapy establishments, and they'll tell our guys they're going on, but all we can do is we can just investigate them as administrative complaints like anything else. We really can't treat those as prostitution investigations. So
Part of my concern is I don't want to influence and have an investigation go sideways or something spoiled because of something that's happened with too many chefs in the kitchen, of being able to say, well, we have this evidence where our guys collected this evidence. I think the criminal prosecution should be the lead, as opposed to making sure the board has stuff. And I worry with police powers, especially on something along those lines. I'd love to figure out what we can do to help you, to where you guys can, and potentially, if that's some form of, access to some files or whatever you need to have through. But I really do worry about too many people coming in involved with police powers, and that could really mess up an investigation.
And I certainly understand that, but this is more about what mandates you want to give this board to participate in these investigations. And if the mandate is as high as it appeared to be in '24, then it would require significantly more resources as well than the board can generate from its licensee population, honestly. And I've discussed this with some of the members of this committee.
Okay. Senator.
Let me ask a question. In your capacity, you're in law enforcement, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, I need to just tell me, because you may already know.
Yes, ma'am.
And the person who has the qualifications as far as being a member on this board, having knowledge of sex trafficking and related law enforcement, what do they do?
They just serve on the board, honestly. And this was, this requirement that the pro tem referred to is in the law, but again, it's not specific. And the appointing authority, it makes the decision. Now, one of those members is actually a nurse who spent 20 years in the ER and has done plenty of sexual trafficking investigations on the nurse examiner side. So that is probably, the spirit of that law is probably being followed in the appointment, but I don't know that it was considered at the time of the appointment.
Madam Chairman, I think
I
guess I need more information, and I don't know, there are a number of these establishments out there, but I would like to know more about just from the members who on this board, from a day-to-day basis, as far as what do you see, how do you deal with that? What do you need, what's missing here?
Go ahead.
I think all of us in the legislature, when we pass that law, want these professional massage, these prostitution rings run out of massage therapy shut down. And we charge the board with doing that, but they really don't have the resources to do that.
So,
But I can,
So how do they shut them down under the statute without having the evidence to do that?
and that's something that we can talk about, what language and what level they have to, what burden of proof they would need to
Thank
shut
you.
down is what you're looking for there. But the problem that I would have in a situation like this is I don't want just to shut them down, because if you just shut them down, then they can open up the next day under a new name. If you have a criminal investigation, there's ways to have that actually have some consequences, as opposed to just licensee X can no longer get a license, and now they have under Y. But if you just have too many people investigating with a criminal investigation with that problem through there, that becomes that's significant.
Okay, take it one step further. Yes, they're involved in a criminal investigation, so they suspend their license, and then the prostitution ring flies in a new manager with a different name that hasn't been prosecuted at the same address. They have no power to not grant the license. Am I overstating it?
That's correct, if they make the qualification.
So they haven't done anything but change the name on the license. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, and I wholeheartedly support one of you attorneys, and especially you as a prosecutor, to write whatever's going to work. It is above my knowledge level, but I'm smart enough to understand what they got going on here.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm not challenging what you're trying to say.
No, we're having a
But
thoughtful discussion.
This is just, I'm not challenging, but I am saying police powers is a exponential issuance that we're talking about. That's a significant. There's problems that could potentially arise from there that we should look at. We don't want unintended consequences of, hey, I'm the highest. You know, it's a cowboy mentality.
I get it that police powers is, and it might have, that's the only terminology that I had in my playbook to say that they needed something more than what they have, because our chairman, Rex Reynolds, before he was budget chair, sponsored a bill. And what year was that?
I think that was 23, wasn't it?
Yeah, in 23, really, really thoughtful in trying to bust up these sexual trafficking rings.
No, I really want these busted up. Please understand. I'm not
I
saying
get it.
we're
Yeah,
not. I'm
right.
just, it's more complicated than just simply saying, let's just give everybody police powers to come through.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I'm enjoying the thoughtful conversation. I don't think that you're opposing me. I think we're just exploring what needs to be done. And what I'm saying is, this board needs help when it comes to actually doing what we've charged them to do, or we got to pull that out of the statute and say, law enforcement, it's your ball.
Who is your attorney? Your attorneys are with the Attorney General's office, correct?
No, our attorneys work for us. So we have one dedicated attorney that works on a interagency agreement that she's employed by us, but she works exclusively with massage at this point.
It may be tomorrow when you come before for the report that you could give some more thoughts on that, I think, and this give us a little time to do a little research on that.
On the law enforcement authority?
On the how that can be best suited to take care of the issue here, the clarification you referred to, and then maybe look at something that was a cooperative type thing with the law enforcement that could be implemented.
Yes, I would think, and I would say actually Representative Simpson may be able to help us on something to do with information sharing and evidence gathering that APOS guys won't give to non-APOS guys.
Right, and I think the AG's office can probably help us out a little bit there too.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
One
Senator Elliott.
more point, Mr. Chairman, just as we're thinking about this. I think it's also important to kind of ponder whether or not it's appropriate for the licensees, the reputable licensees that are doing massage therapy to be funding essentially a law enforcement operation, and whether or not that's something that we should be expecting from these licensees, because that's very expensive, and I think we're seeing that reflected in the finances. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the members? Thank you, sir. All right. Next up, Board of Pharmacy.
This is a one-year rollover review of the Board of Pharmacy. The Board of Pharmacy was originally created in February of 1887 to regulate the practice of pharmacy in our state. You guys passed legislation this past session regarding this board to roll it over for a year, to change the board up, to provide for different authority for penalties, and the board's authorization to discipline their licensees. I would like to note that this act did become effective on May 14th of 2025, but not all parts were effective on that date. So you'll see some notes throughout the report that say this is what's happening now, because that part of the law is not in effect yet. So currently this board is made up of 5 members that are appointed by the governor. They serve 5-year terms. They are compensated $500 per day plus actual expenses. This board's administrator is an interim administrator, Casey Shaw. His salary is $130,000 plus $5,000 a month. This board does own real property. They own the building located at 111 Village Street in Birmingham, the board's offices. They have 23 employees. Legal counsel is provided by a contracted attorney, Jennifer Newman. They also receive legal services from the Attorney General's office. They do have a contract for specific litigation with Mark Boardman, and then they have a contract for an administrative hearings officer. This board's funds are not held in the state's treasury. They are held outside in 3 different bank accounts. The board does retain the funds at year end. On page 6, you'll see that the board issues 24 different types of licenses, and at the end of May of 25, they had 32,940 licensees. The qualifications for licensure for the different type of licenses can be found on pages 7 through 9. On page 9, you'll see some examination results for the testing for the 2 pharmacy schools in our state. There are also more examination results on page 10 because there are 2 different tests that they take. The reciprocity information can be found on pages 10 and 11. There are some licensee demographics on page 12. The board's significant issues begin on page 13. The first significant issue is that a review of the board's minutes revealed that the settlement agreement with the board's former secretary was noted and addressed as a case instead of being documented as a settlement agreement. The second significant issue is that the minutes of a board meeting did not reflect certain representations that had been made by the board. The third significant issue is that the board did not comply with the Open Meetings Act, specifically Section 3625A7, when entering into an executive session. The fourth significant issue is that the board did not comply with the code with the code section, its own statutes, when relating to the appointment of a secretary. The next few significant issues come from the questionnaires. Those were that chain pharmacies, community pharmacies, and oxygen retailers indicated that reimbursements were the most significant issue facing their profession. The next issue is that pharmacists and chain pharmacies indicated that the board did not respond to inquiries in a timely manner. The seventh issue is that chain pharmacies do not think that the regulation of their profession by the board is necessary to protect the public's welfare. Non-resident pharmacies, and then the third-party logistics providers, wholesalers, repackagers, manufacturers, that's one big license group. oxygen retailers, and those indicated that the increase in regulatory burdens being imposed on them is the most significant issue facing their profession. Prior significant issues start on page 15. This board did resolve 20 of the 26 outstanding issues that they had. One that is still unresolved, or was during this period, is back from 2019, and it was that the board did not pay an employee the correct amount for annual and sick leave upon separating from the agency. This happened again during this one-year review. They had an employee who was retiring from the board. The former secretary overrode the board's policy and dictated that a payment of 600 sick leave hours be paid, when the policy is that only half of their sick leave should have been paid. It resulted in an overpayment of $11,000. The board notified the employee of the overpayment, and the amount was repaid to the board. On page 16, we have the continued prior significant issues, and these are from the questionnaires. So we had pharmacists and pharmacy techs that responded to our survey saying that they continued to have a negative perception of the board. From 2024, we also had that institutional pharmacies considered workload, staffing, and pay as the most significant issue facing their profession. That came forward again. We also had pharmacists, intern externs, chain pharmacies, community pharmacies, institutional pharmacies, all reporting still that pharmacy benefit managers are the most significant issue facing their profession. We continue to have pharmacists, community pharmacies, chain pharmacies, and 503B facilities indicate that they think the board's laws, rules, or policies are unnecessary restrictions on their profession. And we also had complainants that responded to our survey say they were not satisfied with the board's handling of their complaints. Additionally, they felt that the board didn't do everything they could do to resolve their complaints. We did test complaint files, and we didn't see any issues with the board's procedural handling of complaints.
All right, one comment on this is that last year, the legislation that sunset extended for a year, that was passed. There was one thing left out that the committee had agreed on, but it was left out in the legislation. It wasn't corrected prior to passing due to time constraints, and that was the appointment of one board seat. In the interest of time to get that legislation passed, that board seat would not take effect until time for us to correct it this session. So that will be needed to be put in legislation that we move forward this time. So at this time, are there any members with questions? Okay. All right.
I've never seen a board so universally disliked by its people. I mean, this is probably the most unpopular board I've seen. And I'm sitting here reading these overpayments to people that retire, and they're making the people pay it back. They paid that lady $150,000 to leave, and I think they gave her another $150,000 in accrued sick leave to get her. She got almost $300,000 to leave. Have we checked to make sure they calculated that right? Because they hadn't been able to calculate other people's, right?
Yes, sir, we did check the calculation of her leave payout.
I mean, that's ridiculous paying somebody that kind of. It's like being a football coach. This board just, the level of dislike from their members and their licensees is just mind-boggling to me. I will.
Very interesting that it was listed as a case claim as well.
Yeah, they did kind of dance around that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Representative.
Mr. Chair, and again, I hate harping on this, but I harped on it last year, so I'm going to harp on it again. There's a reason why I'm hitting so hard on geographic diversity, so that way you don't get the same group of people from the same area that can just be friends, and that's what causes people not to trust the board. If you look at this board, there are 3 people, 3 of the 6 are from Auburn. 3, 4. Nothing against Auburn. I understand, Senator, but 3 are from 6 from Auburn, and there's another one from Dadeville, which is right outside Auburn. I mean, you've got to. I get it, but if everybody is there, then what's the purpose? I mean, there's nobody from anywhere else from outside the state other than coming in and saying, If they want to be the Alabama Board of Pharmacy for the city of Auburn, great. But if they want to be the Board of Pharmacy for the state of Alabama, they need to have some people from other places other than just people sitting in that, if you can all get together in a 15-minute drive, that's not good for the state.
Rebuttal, Senator
Well,
Van.
I was just going to say there are things like, I mean, if you look at that, there's a logical basis for, like with the mining board or whatever around Tuscaloosa. Well, guess what? That's where the mining is. But pharmacy, and I was teasing with you.
No, I
where the
get
state
it.
Pharmacy school is, but nonetheless, pharmacy's all across the state. I mean, it's we want it to be all over the state, and so it should be fairly dispersed as opposed to something like mining, which is fairly,
There's a pretty good pharmacy school in Sanford too. Let me shout for my alumni for a minute.
It's not the state pharmacy school.
Currently, there's no geographical requirements. So maybe we need to do that. I mean, pharmacists are all over this. I agree with you. Pharmacists are all over the state. And whereas the school may be there, I mean, that, I don't think that holds water. I do think that's probably something that we need to look at. We're from all over the state. Good thing. We represent, we come together, we have a clearer picture of what the state of Alabama is based on what you bring back from your constituents and your needs. I may not be able to get there, every little hamlet, but based on you representing those people, I understand better. So, yeah, I think we need to change that.
All right. Any other members, representatives?
I guess my first line into this questioning is, when we passed the sunset bill last year, did it become effective immediately? Was it a May or June or effective date?
It was
It was
depends on
May.
what it was.
It was May.
The effective date was May, but some parts, like the board has to be in place by
Right.
January 1, and there were other
right.
stipulations that had to happen by January 1.
All right. So I think when we kind of get into the numbers of it, we had in the statute that, and it took a while for us to kind of figure out what we wanted to do, and it may not have been the right thing, but we limited the compensation to $500 per board member, and in the month of June they received almost $5,000 apiece. So I'm not sure that all of the bill that we enacted was put into practice on the immediate side of it, and that's something we'll need to talk about, when we get into it tomorrow.
Okay.
And there's probably more than that, but that's one I wanted to bring up.
All right. Any other committee member comments? Hearing none. All right, let's move on to Board of Electrical Contractors.
All right, this is another one-year rollover. The Board of Electrical Contractors was established in 1985, and they license and regulate electrical contractors. This board is made up of 9 members appointed by the governor. They serve 3-year terms. This board is compensated at $300 per day with a 15-day max, and they also receive travel. They had the former executive director and current executive director attended board member training. This board operates under an interagency agreement with the Board of Heating, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Contractors. Jeffrey B. Kraft is the executive director of that board, and he serves as the executive director of this board. The interagency agreement began on June 1 of 2025, and it actually runs through October 1 of 2026. It is for $174,000 annually. This board does not own any real property and has 1 employee. They have legal counsel from the Attorney General's office. Their funds are held in the state's treasury. They do have some requirements at year end. Any unspent and unencumbered funds over $100,000 should go back to the general fund. They issue 3 types of licenses. They, at the beginning of June, they had 5,376 licensees. The information for licensure qualifications and some examination statistics are on pages 4 through 6. We don't have pass-fail statistics for students from Alabama educational institutions. Those aren't available because post-secondary education is not required for licensure. Licenses are to be renewed annually. And there are some continuing education requirements that are shown on page 6. The significant issues for this board are start on page 7. The first one is that the board did not maintain accurate information notating the date checks and/or money orders were received by the board. The second issue was that it could not be determined whether minutes were kept in accordance with section 3625A4 for 2 of the meetings held during the sunset review period. The third issue is from questionnaires, and it is that journeyman licensees that responded to our survey indicated that they don't believe they're adequately informed by the board of changes and interpretations to the board's positions, policies, rules, and laws. 6 of the 10 prior significant issues and prior findings had been resolved. Those that remained are the following. One is from 2020, and it was that the board is not accurately reporting its encumbrances and accounts payable at the end of the fiscal year. This still remains partially resolved. While they weren't required to transfer money at the end of fiscal year 24, the board still did not accurately report its encumbrances and accounts payable to the comptroller's office. And that matters because it's the balance after they do that for what has to go back to the general fund. The next issue was from 2024, and it was that the board had incorrectly coded examination fees as licensure fees and licensure fees as examination fees. And we found again during this sunset review period that the board did not properly record 200 receipts. They were just recorded as the wrong revenue types. Another significant issue from 2024 that came forward was that the board had an administrative rule in effect establishing a fee for an initial provisional electrical contractor's license. There was a law passed in 2024 which discontinued the issuance of new provisional licenses, but the rule still exists. The next one is another one from 2024 that the board had not complied with certain provisions of the executive orders issued by the governor. The board still has not complied with all those, and the one that is left is regarding the proper use and disposal of state vehicles, and the board actually does have 2 vehicles. So they need to do that.
All right. Members. Senator.
The question I have is a significant issue. One, relative to the depositing of checks and time and amount and how the number of checks. And I don't know what the problem, but then I look at it, you got 1 employee. The checks are not the only thing. And typically, if a person writes a check and hadn't deposited, sometimes they cancel a check. If it goes in the mail, they figure, maybe it got lost in the mail or whatever. But, and I don't know how it's impacting their bottom line on this. But then the other issues about just recording of certain things. But you still got 1 employee trying to do all this?
So while the board has 1 employee, that's the board's employee, they do have and have had interagency agreements.
Okay.
At some point during the sunset review period last year, if you remember when we did this board, they had just entered into an interagency agreement with the Board of General Contractors. So there was staff with that board who was supposed to be providing administrative services. This summer, they switched from the Board of General Contractors over to the Board of Heating and Air Conditioning and Refrigeration. So that board is providing services, and the employee isn't actually doing the administrative services as much as those people are through those agreements.
So prior to the switch, were they having these kinds of issues?
The deposit issues were while they were under the General Contractors Board.
Okay. Does that mean it's better or it's worse now?
It's my understanding that once it switched over to the Heating and Air Board, that the deposits got made.
Okay,
So they caught things up.
okay. Well, maybe they'll tell us the good things tomorrow.
Representative.
I'm sorry. I may have heard you wrong, so please, if it's my error, it could be my error. Did you say they have multiple vehicles that have not been disposed of or gone through the process correctly?
No, sir, not that. They're supposed to have written policies to address the proper use and disposal of state vehicles according to an executive order.
Okay.
And they just haven't done that policy. And this is a board that actually has vehicles, but they still don't have a policy.
Okay. How many vehicles do they have?
2.
How many employees do they have?
Well, they only have one that is specifically assigned to the board as an employee, but they have interagency agreements with other boards to provide services.
Okay. That's what threw me off was I thought you said 2 vehicles and I thought there was only 1 employee, but then it's
So Representative, we need to get Representative Underwood to do the math on that.
I went to law school because I was told there would be no math. So that,
Representative.
And if I recall correctly, they didn't know they had a vehicle when they were being managed by Smith Warren. So this board was originally managed by Smith Warren. Then they went to the contractors board. Then they didn't feel, there was some illnesses and some stuff that took place with that staff. They felt like it was a better fit to go to HVAC. So we must recognize that this board is doing their best to comply, and they are moving in the right direction, would be my observation, but feel free to come up with your own. But they started out at a deficit and not even knowing they had one vehicle until the sunset review, you know.
Margie, thank you for that. I was wondering how they got in that predicament, and now you said it, Warren.
And I hate the commentary because I swear I'm trying to let him be the total chair.
I was wondering how that they went in the ditch. Now we know how they went in the ditch, and they're trying to get pulled out like a couple of other licensor boards that got run
And
off
they
the
are
rails.
doing the industry consolidation, you know, in other words,
Yeah.
related industry consolidation, which I'm personally in favor of that, a baby board going with a big board. Because if y'all remember, I think it was 2 sessions ago, HVAC and electrical contractors were at each other's throat over a bill. Now they've joined forces. Isn't that a beautiful world?
Yep. If you weren't just so shy, it'd be interesting.
I did tell him I was going to be so quiet at this meeting, and they both voted that I was incapable of that or some other nonsense.
I think actually what I said is you may want to be, but you don't have the ability to be. So, all right. Anyone other questions, Senator?
Just a little overall commentary, and I've kind of saved it to the end so we weren't doing it one at a time. But members, if y'all will look at these and look at the significant findings, they are all administrative in nature, right? It's just competent, capable, effective management of a board. Notice in a meeting, right? Proper record keeping, proper accounting. It's just over and over and over again, we're seeing the same problems over and over and over again, and it's just effective management. And what we see on top of that, and this was the theme we were just on, is you then see these poor boards, and I will say that, these poor board members who are appointed to serve, often with little or no compensation, that are trying desperately to find some competent, capable, effective management. And what do? They go from one to another, looking for somebody to see if they can just keep the paperwork in line. And so I think it's a common theme, and I think it's the thing that we see over and over and over again. And my point to my friend over there is I think we ought to look at how to figure this problem out, because it is the problem that we see over and over again. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Okay. Ms. Thomas, thank you and the Board of Examiners for bringing the information for us and explaining our questions. You do a fantastic job, and the fellow next to you does okay too, so it's all right. So, members, we've already had the hearings on half of the boards previously. So that we can manage our time wisely tomorrow, please go ahead, if you haven't already, and get your thoughts together on the legislation, the time period, so on and so forth for tomorrow, because I know we have more hearings tomorrow that you'll have to also compile your thoughts for that. So if you could go ahead and get the ones that you already have done, get those organized so that when we get together we can have an efficient meeting, and That would make us be, I think, a little more efficient with our time tomorrow. Looks like in the morning, we've got a pretty full schedule as well because we have a number of hearings. So a couple of things before we adjourn. Representative Lamb, do you have any report on the mining at this time? Follow up.
I do. Representative Brinyard and myself met with the Executive Director, Kathy Love. I think this committee charged us with probably two issues. One being why they have $7 million in a deposit account, and the other being they realized that the revenues, cash balances were increasing every year. To me, they satisfied me on that. First, we're dealing with the $7 million, and I've got a report that they gave us that I'll share with all the community members, got spreadsheets, all that. I'm not going to bore you with that here, but the bottom line is on the $7 million, it's a surety. So mining companies put the money in the surety account, and they can't spend it on anything other than reclamation. So it's a surety. So it's probably not adequate to do all that they need to do. All right, and the other issue was the increasing cash balances. If you look at some of these spreadsheets and all, it'll show you that what they have to do is they have to spend 100% of the expenditures on the reclamation before the feds will reimburse them 50%. So it's a timing issue. What they like to do is keep like one half of their budget, which is I think $4 million, and they like to keep half of that in cash balances so they can operate till they get the federal money back. So my conclusion was that they were operating efficiently, and there was not a problem there.
Okay. I think that satisfies most of the comments. Senator Gavan, you got a question?
Wasn't there an issue about the bad actors getting their bond back? Seemed like that was a concern too.
She had addressed that a little bit. I didn't dwell on that, but they, I think it's going to take legislation to give them money back, is the way I understood that. So that issue may come up, and I think I got a note on that, but I don't think that's an issue at this point.
Okay. All right. I think if you just review that, we thank you for your efforts on that behalf, and your investigative abilities there resulted quite well.
And the brevity of your report.
I have several page one that I'm going to give each one of you.
We love your ability for cliff notes. So, members, again, tomorrow we have some public hearings. Those are going to be limited to 3 minutes. And I've instructed those that are going to be speaking tomorrow that if they have something they felt like beyond that, to have something printed to give to you. Nice talk is fine, but not at a public hearing. Just say who they were and to introduce their any board members that are here. So those that may be here, that's just a friendly reminder because we've got a lot to do tomorrow. So we will reconvene at 9 a.m. in the morning, and with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I understand the one issue falling off.
You're not the only one that suffers from that.
Okay, so let me show you what I'm trying to do. You might have to go, you might already have it done.
He was trying to spend that the other day, and
Just decided that
I got about Carly and Justine over there.
Behavior analysis, they don't have any fees. So it's like, the highest was 183 assisted living administrators per member. Per member, divided by member, so the lowest being, look at this on the bill, they got the most work, they got $29. Okay, they pay how much? Well, it's 135%. They have how many? Only 8? Oh, wow. No, so they're paying $11,000 per member? No. Actually, licensees. Right, so they're turned out to be, yeah, because that's what it's 135. So, administrators, they're paying $163 per member. It's 83. That's what I'm saying, I'm just trying to see. So what's so labor intensive about assisted living? Is it like massage therapy where they're having to go out and help find criminals? Yeah, and I divided it by half, so 90,000 divided by 3,122. So yeah, I divided that by half, because that's their share. Came up with 20. Yeah, per member. That's a bargain. Compared to 183 or 135 for private. So that was $72 per member.
I mean, I'm not saying that thing doesn't exist, I'm saying it does now.
Right. So see, to me, it doesn't really matter if they got tons of members. Yeah, so I'm just trying to say, okay, per member, how much are they paying? I don't know, what am I'm just trying to figure out. I don't know if it's apples and oranges. And that's the problem. I think you can do it, but I don't know if you
Yeah, absolutely.
And they, so that's what I'm saying, that would, massage therapy is very complicated, and they're $29. I don't know where I'm going, but for some reason my brain is going. Yeah, yeah. I don't think. I know, like I was telling him, I was like, I don't know where I'm going. Suddenly now I need to know this. And that's how my gut tells me before my brain figures out what it is I want to do. I'm not good at it. Yeah, like I said, I may not be going anywhere, but I know I'm trying to travel somewhere. Trying to figure out if there's a correlation.
I'm glad I got the promise here. You mean like?
I mean, you know, kids.
I think it's got to be in a
I'm gonna keep mine.
Keep yours?
Yeah. 'Cause I can't remember which ones I got and which one I don't. Am I on? Hey, did you get one of these?
Can I have one?
Please critique it if something there don't look right.
Thank you. You always have.
All right, you don't switch up all my notes. I'm sitting right there.
Hey, Senator,
Yes, sir.
is that what, page 24, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, is that cleared up?
Well, no, we need to reverse it. I mean, why should, well, that's my thoughts, is that we're giving money back to the people.
Well, if it's been reclaimed though, and they fulfilled the obligation, should we, if there's like an excess, should it go back to the one that paid for it?
That's me, thank you.
Now, if not, she was talking, I talked to her about that. She would like the ability to keep it in there and do something